Hi guys, welcome back to MBA Leaks. If you're preparing for placements, this video is really important. We are going to reveal one thing which can be asked in any company interview that you sit for during SIP and final placement. And most people don't prepare for it properly. Just watch it till the end. We can assure you, if you understand this one topic well, you'll feel much more confident going into interviews. Today, we will be talking about guesstimates, which basically is a question where you're asked to guess a number, something you obviously don't know, but you break it down into small steps, make logical assumptions, and use simple math to get a rough estimate. You don't need to be accurate, you just need to show clear and structured thinking. Before we deep dive, we would like to give you some context. All of us at MBA Leaks have been part of placement committees at old IIMs. We've seen the shortlisting and interview process closely. Some of us are currently working in management consulting firms, and all of us have solved more than 500 guesstimates and cases during our B school journey. So everything we share here comes from real experience. There are two main benefits of solving guesstimates. First, they directly help in interviews, not just consulting, but also other domains such as marketing, operations, BFSI, and more. This is because guesstimates are now a common part of many interviews these days. Let's say, for example, in an Amazon interview, one of the candidates was asked to estimate the number of parcels delivered in a day in India. Second, they're great practice for structuring. If you solve enough guesstimates, your ability to think clearly and structure any problem improves, which helps with cases and overall interview thinking. So, we strongly recommend making guesstimates a regular part of your preparation. Now, since we have already talked about why one should prepare for guesstimates, let's try to decode where they can come from. Guesstimate may not always be something the interviewer randomly thinks of on the spot. In fact, most of the time, it may come from various sources such as the company's background and business, the role you're applying for, general awareness or trending topics, your personal background, which includes things like your hometown, undergrad college, or internship/work experience, and hobbies. All of this typically gets mentioned in your introduction. So, yes, the interviewer might jump to a guesstimate straight after hearing your intro. So, how do you actually solve a guesstimate in an interview? We follow a simple step by step approach. First, clarify the problem statement. Make sure you've understood exactly what's being asked. Then, ask a few basic preliminary questions to define the scope. We'll share a framework for this in a bit. Once that's done, come up with a working formula and share your structure. Tell the interviewer how you plan to break down the problem and walk them through your assumptions. Then, start estimating each part step by step. Speak your logic out loud as you calculate. Once you arrive at a final number, take a quick pause and do a sanity check. Does it sound reasonable based on real world logic? And finally, wrap up with a clear and concise summary. Now that we've got that structure covered, let's actually start with the guesstimate. This is something I was personally asked during my summer internship interview. In my introduction, I casually mentioned that I'm a big foodie, and the interviewer immediately picked up on that. He smiled and said, "Great, since you love food, can you estimate how much potato is used in a day at a McDonald's outlet?" That's how the guesstimate kicked off. Let me take you through how I approached it. After clarifying the problem statement with the interviewer, I would ask clarifying questions. So let's begin with this. Can you let me know the store location and its operating hours? And which day are we talking about?
Consider the outlet is a standalone store located in Ahmedabad. You can consider close to IIMA, and it is operating from morning 10 a.m. to midnight. You can consider it as a normal working day.
Okay, got it. Can you let me know what are the different sales channels that store operates?
Consider that the store serves the customers through offline sales, drive-through and online sales through third-party apps like Zomato, Swiggy, and their own platform.
Now I have got the idea for store. I would like to know more about the SKUs that we sell at this outlet.
At this outlet, we sell only burgers and French fries. For the ease of the calculations, you can consider that only one type of burger and French fries is made at this store.
Understood. Now I would like to know, considering the medium-sized burger and French fries, is it fair to assume that 40 grams of potato would be required for 1 unit of patty and 150 grams for 1 unit of fries?
Yes, you can go ahead with that number.
Now I would like to understand the process of preparing the burger and French fries. Could you please walk me through the key steps involved?
Sure. For the burger, the process involves heating the patty, toasting the bun, and assembling the ingredients and packaging. For French fries, it includes taking out the frozen fries, deep frying, salting, and packaging.
Now, if you're thinking, how do I know which questions to ask in a real interview? Or what if I miss something important at the start? Don't worry. In the next section, we're going to give you a simple and reliable framework that helps avoid common mistakes and ensures you start strong in any guesstimate. After clarifying the problem statement with the interviewer, the candidate begins by asking a few preliminary questions to understand the context better. The candidate follows a simple structure for this, which they like to call where, when, what, and how. It helps cover all the essential details before jumping into assumptions or calculations. Let's start with where. The candidate asked the interviewer about the store's location, and he mentioned that it's a standalone outlet in Ahmedabad, close to IMA. Next is when. The candidate wanted to know the store's operating hours and which day they're considering, because both affect customer footfalls. The interviewer said the store runs from 10 a.m. to midnight and they're looking at a normal working day. Then they moved to what. The candidate asked what products the outlet sells. The interviewer said the store offers just two SKUs, burgers and French fries. For simplicity, it was assumed there's only one type of burger and one type of fries. To make calculations easier, the candidate clarified whether they could assume 40 grams of potato per burger patty and 150 grams per fries portion, and the interviewer confirmed that's fine. Finally, they explored how the store operates and processes orders. The candidate asked about the different sales channels, and the interviewer shared that the store caters to offline walk ins, drive through customers, and online orders through Zomato, Swiggy, and their own app. They also asked about the preparation process. For burgers, it involves heating the patty, toasting the bun, assembling the ingredients, and packaging. For fries, the steps are taking out frozen fries, deep frying, salting, and packaging. Once the candidate had this clarity across all four buckets where, when, what, and how they were in a position to start building assumptions and solve the guesstimate confidently. Once you've identified the scope of the guesstimate by asking the right set of preliminary questions, is to come up with an overall formula. You can actually start solving the guesstimate at the get go, but it's a good idea to present an overall formula so you actually understand what you have to estimate and you can chart out a path for your guesstimate. And especially for complicated guesstimates, this becomes very important so you don't miss out any components. So let's do it together. To calculate the total amount of potatoes used, we simply multiply the number of burgers sold in a day with the potato used per burger and add it to the number of fries sold in a day multiplied by the potato used per portion of fries. Now, to estimate the number of burgers and fries sold in a day, I've split the store's 14-hour operating window into three demand periods, starting with peak demand for 4 hours, followed by medium and low demand periods of 5 hours each. Does that sound reasonable to proceed with?
Yes, that breakdown works. You can go ahead with this approach.
I would like to first calculate the number of burgers and fries made during the peak demand hours using a bottleneck approach that is based on how many units can be prepared per hour at maximum capacity. This is because during peak hours, demand from all channels is typically higher than what the store can serve. So it's not demand that drives sales, but how much the kitchen can actually produce. Then, for the medium and low demand hours, I plan to assume that the kitchen operates at a certain percentage of the peak demand. This will help keep the math simple yet logically consistent. Would you like me to go ahead with this approach, or is there anything you'd like to add or modify here?
Yes, you can go ahead. This kind of vetting is important at every stage because it keeps the interviewer aligned with your thought process and also gives them a chance to guide you in case you're heading in a different direction than what they expected.
Let's start with estimating the peak demand using capacity and time available. So now let's try to figure out how many burgers and fries can actually be made during these peak hours. And for that, we'll use a basic bottleneck logic. This means we'll find the maximum number of items the kitchen can produce in 1 hour, assuming constant demand and no delays. Let's begin with the burgers. Based on the earlier process breakdown, I'd like to assume that frying the patty takes 1.5 minutes, toasting and assembling takes 1 minute, and packaging takes another 45 seconds. Would that be reasonable?
Yes, you can consider that.
Now, even though the total time adds up to 3.25 minutes, we'll consider only the bottleneck, which is the patty frying step, 1.5 minutes, as that's the slowest, most limiting part of the process. So, maximum burgers per hour will be 60 divided 1.5, that is 40 burgers.
Do keep a note of this. We are not dividing by 3.25 here to find out the maximum number of burgers made per hour because it's the bottleneck step that limits the flow and not the entire operations.
Now, let's move to fries. Can I assume that deep frying takes 2 minutes, then salting takes 1 minute, and packaging takes another 45 seconds?
Yes, you can go ahead with that.
Again, even though the total adds up to 3.75 minutes, the bottleneck operation is deep frying, which takes 2 minutes. So maximum fries that can be made per hour will be 60 divided by 2, that is 30 fries. So during the 4 peak demand hours, a total of 160 burgers, 40 per hour, and 120 fries, 30 per hour, will be consumed. Now that we've estimated peak demand based on capacity, let's move to the other two parts of the day, medium and least demand hours. But before we proceed, let's confirm one more thing. Is it fair to assume that the kitchen operates at around 50% of peak capacity during medium demand hours and about 30% during least demand hours?
Yes, you can go ahead with that assumption.
Let's apply that now. During the medium demand hours, which span 5 hours, I've assumed that the kitchen operates at 50% of its peak capacity. So instead of 40 burgers an hour, the store would prepare 20 burgers per hour. Over 5 hours, that's 100 burgers. Moving on to the low demand period, which also lasts 5 hours, I've assumed the kitchen runs at 30% capacity. That brings us to 12 burgers per hour, which means 60 burgers. Adding it all together, 160 burgers during peak hours, 100 during medium demand, and 60 during low demand, the total number of burgers sold in a day comes out to 320. Now coming to fries. During medium demand hours, the kitchen would operate at 50% of peak capacity, resulting in 15 servings per hour. Over 5 hours, that gives us 75 fries. In the low demand period, running at 30% capacity, the store would produce 9 servings per hour, totaling 45 fries in 5 hours. So summing it all up, 120 fries during peak hours, 75 during medium, and 45 during low demand. The total number of fries sold in a day is 240. That gives us our total daily demand, 320 burgers and 240 portions of fries. In the next part, we'll use these numbers to calculate the total potato consumption in a day and see how much raw material this single outlet would need just to keep up with demand. From the clarifying questions earlier, we're assuming that each burger patty uses 40 grams of potato and each portion of fries uses 150 grams. Given that 320 burgers and 240 servings of fries are sold in a day, the potato used for burgers is 320 times 40, which is 12.8 kilograms. And for fries, it's 240 times 150, which is 36 kilograms. So the total potato consumed in a day is 12.8 plus 36 equals 48.8 kilograms. So, on an average working day, this standalone McDonald's outlet near IIM Ahmedabad would consume around 48.8 kilograms of potatoes. Now, here comes the slightly tricky part, and where some real world thinking comes into play. Not all the potatoes purchased by the outlet will actually be used for making burgers and fries. In any kitchen, there's always some level of wastage, whether it's due to spoilage, improper cuts, size variation, or operational losses. So, to make our estimate more practical, we'll factor in a buffer for wastage. Let's assume that 10% of the potatoes procured aren't usable, either because they don't meet quality standards or get wasted in preparation. Now, earlier we calculated that the total potato consumption required was 48.8 kilograms. So, to account for 10% wastage, the total quantity of potatoes that is consumed will be 48.8 kilo divided by 0.9, that is 54.2 kilograms. Here's the key takeaway. This kind of out of the box thinking, where you go beyond basic math and think about real world factors like spoilage or procurement buffers, earns you serious brownie points in interviews. It shows you're not just solving numbers, but also thinking like an operator or business owner. And trust me, that gives you a clear edge over other candidates. Now, you might think the guesstimate is done, right? Well, not quite. There's one final step that a lot of candidates forget in interviews, and that's doing a quick sanity check of the numbers you just calculated. Why is this important? Because sometimes, even if you've done all the math correctly, a small assumption error can lead to a completely unrealistic answer. Let's take a quick example. Say you're asked to estimate the daily revenue of a DMart store, and your final number comes out to just a few thousand rupees. That would immediately raise a red flag, because common sense tells you a typical DMart easily does revenue in lakhs per day. So, by doing a sanity check, you're validating your logic and showing the interviewer that you're not just throwing numbers. You actually understand what they mean in the real world. Even if your final number is slightly off, the interviewer usually won't mind, because you've shown structured thinking, business sense, and self awareness. And that earns you major points. Let's quickly do sanity check for the above example. Our final estimate is 54.2 kilogram of potatoes per day. Now think from an inventory and storage lens. Quick service restaurants like McDonald's usually plan on a weekly stock cycle and not daily. So this outlet would need roughly 380 kilograms of potatoes a week, or about 7 to 8 sacks of 50 kilograms each. That's very reasonable. Outlets like this have cold storage built to handle that kind of volume. If we had landed at something like 120 kilogram per day, over a ton per week, that would have raised red flags from an operation standpoint. But 54.2 kilograms today fits right into what's practical for storage, planning, and smooth kitchen ops. So the estimate checks out.
Now that we're done with the sanity check, we can finally conclude the guesstimate. This slide shows the entire flow we follow to arrive at the final answer. 54.2 kilograms of potatoes used in our McDonald's outlet. You can quickly refer to this slide for a summary. And that brings us to the end of this video. If you found it helpful, please hit the like and subscribe button and share it with fellow MBA students. It'll definitely help them in their placement prep. You can also join our Telegram and Instagram channels. The links are in the description. We'll be sharing a step-by-step document of this guesstimate there. Also, let us know in the comments if you'd like us to cover more guesstimates or case studies in our upcoming videos. Thanks a lot for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.